Hello, everyone. While we're waiting for more attendees to join in, I would love to start a poll for everyone to tell us where you're calling in from, which chapter. There are multiple chapter options, or if you're not a member yet, you can select that as one of the options. Wow, I'm seeing a lot of Greater Western, some Sin states, some Hawaii chapter, Northeast states. Nice. As we get more people to sign in and select which chapter you're calling in from, I think we'll get the webinar started. My name is Cindy Lee. I'm the Vice President of the Greater Western Chapter of Travel and Tourism Research Association. I'm also the BI Tourism Insights Manager at Visit Pasadena. We're very, very excited to welcome you to our first Greater Western TTRA webinar. And today's topic is how Western states utilize resident sentiment in travel and tourism research. We have an incredible panel of state research leaders today to share some insights with us. Brittany Augustine, Director of Research at Arizona Office of Tourism. Denise Jordan, Marketing Analytics and Research Director at Utah Office of Tourism. Graham G., Research Manager at Visit California and a board member of GWTTRA. Javier Parada Torres, Research Manager at Travel Oregon. Kyle Schultz, Research Director at Nevada Department of Tourism and Cultural Affairs. This panel discussion will be moderated by Wendy Keel, President of GWTTRA and Senior Manager of Client Relations and Insights at Tourism Economics. If you have any questions to ask the panel during the discussion, please use the Q&A section to write your questions and we'll monitor and answer at the end of the discussion. Now, I'm going to pass this over to you, Wendy.
Okay, well, welcome everybody. We're very excited to have this webinar. We've never had one before that I'm aware of, and we had a very strong registration for it. So we're very excited about that. You have an incredible panel of researchers talking about this topic. As you'll notice that we focused on state tourism offices for the similarities among them, though we did feel that there's a lot of similarity to any of those of you in destination marketing organizations in terms of how answering these questions are probably all still relevant as well. So this is the way this is going to go, is that we have not prepared PowerPoints. We're not going to go through a lot of data and so on. This is going to be a discussion of which I have a series of topics or questions that we're going to go through, and then each of our panelists are going to respond to them as well. And they've given some really great thought to this particular topic. So what the questions are that we're going to cover, if we have time, it's a little ambitious because it's a lot of material. But the first is going to be what was the need or needs for the resident sentiment research that you conducted? Who requested it? And what were the objectives and goals of the resident sentiment research? The second topic we'll address is what methodologies did you use for your research? Because we noted, or I noted a long time ago, that everybody uses a variety of different methodologies in conducting this research. The third one are what were the key findings? How is the resident sentiment research informing your office and partner decision making? And what were the big ahas? Were there anything that, surprised you, or came out stronger or weaker than you suspected? Often we do research and we're really just validating what we already knew. But was there anything that was a big aha? And then lastly, if we have some time, was there any other research insights from other sources and so on that also helped you understand the perceptions of residents in your community and in your state? So that's what we're going to attempt to cover in the next 50 minutes or whatever we have. So, and then I'll just go around and call on our various panelists and to go and we'll shake it up a little bit. But the first question was, what was the need or needs for the resident sentiment research? Who requested it? What were the objectives? And I'm going to start with Denise to answer this question.
Hey, thanks, Wendy, and thanks, Cindy, for organizing this, and thanks everyone and my fellow panelists. So I joined the Utah Office of Tourism in 2019, and almost immediately we were talking about doing resident sentiment. And within a year of me being in the office, we had a pandemic, and there was a lot of visitation, talk about overcrowding, a lot of headlines that were negative, and our leadership team just really had talked about it thoroughly and wanted to get beyond the conversations and headlines and try to understand a baseline of what residents really thought and how they perceive tourism in and around the state. Um, and so I would say that's the driving reason for us. And it's been, I mean, I can just say it's been a really great feedback mechanism. We're listening for if something looks different or the results are different. We've been doing it for 4 years now, and um, it really supports our Red Emerald strategic plan. That's our internal strategic plan. One of the items that we focus on with that plan is paying attention to community-led visitor readiness. And this goes really well with that and understanding the balance of what's happening in the communities in the state.
Yeah, and I noted in your notes you called it a three-legged stool where you have to balance the visitor, residents, and stakeholders, and it's important to understand how they all fit together, which I thought was a very nice way of saying that. Yes, you do. So I'm going to go on to Graham and see if he can answer this question as well.
Sure. Hi, everyone. So I joined in 2019 as well here at Visit California, and it's kind of when we were starting to think about it as well. I mean, think back then, we were dealing with a lot of specific examples of over tourism. I think back, Big Little Lies was a hit TV show, and the Bixby Bridge on the Central Coast on Highway 1 was really being kind of inundated with visitors, Lombard Street in San Francisco. There were reports of bad behavior among international visitors, and that was really kind of a driving force. And then, of course, the pandemic led to a whole set of other issues with tourism shifting to rural regions and housing issues and matching jobs with housing. So we, as part of the pandemic, we received EDA grants to do strategic regional planning. And so resident sentiment research really became kind of the first step in that. So that was really kind of what led us to do it. We're unique as a state DMO in that we are entirely industry funded by hotels, restaurants, retail, attractions, rental car agencies. And so everything we really do is to support the industry. And so we've done resident sentiment research to provide the industry just a benchmark and to understand kind of where we are in terms of sentiment.
Great. Moving on to Kyle.
Yeah, thanks, Wendy. And for those of you on the call, if those of you who know me at least, if I sound a little bit different or a little bit under the weather, my 1-year-old got sick over the weekend, and he very graciously passed that on to me earlier this week. So if I sound a little under the weather, that's why. I feel mostly okay. But yeah, for us, it wasn't really anything that was directed from any one individual. I think it was just a kind of a collective understanding among our leadership group that resident sentiment was important, and that we really wanted to get feedback from our residents. As Denise and Graham said, I think all of us Western states experienced a lot of over tourism to certain parts of our states during the pandemic, as people had limited options um, to do various tourism activities. And so that puts strain on some communities that may not be expecting as many tourists as they have gotten. So this was our first resident sentiment study in its kind of current form. We did one with the OmniTrack group in 2017 or 2018, I believe, and that provided us some good insight. We went with the University of Nevada, Reno to help us with this round. But yeah, I think really our goal was to just kind of get a baseline to see how residents were feeling about tourism in their communities. We didn't have any particular objectives for where we wanted to be on any particular metric. So, for example, we didn't say, we want to hit an 8.0 out of 10 on a 1 to 10 rating scale for certain questions. We really just wanted to use this as kind of a listening mechanism and kind of go from there. One of my objectives was to have this survey be utilized not just purely in the tourism space, So we asked certain questions about general community questions like, what do you like about your community? What do you find your community is dealing with in terms of challenges? We had some questions on arts and culture, history, public lands. And so my kind of hope is this survey is also useful to organizations like the Governor's Office of Economic Development, Governor's Finance Office, state parks, public lands, the Arts Council, kind of non-tourist organizations as well, to hopefully make us be seen as a resource to all these other agencies. So that would be one objective that I think I had, but in terms of actual like metrics that we wanted to hit, we didn't necessarily have those for this round.
Great. Okay. And Brittany, what happened to Brittany?
I'm here. Just needed to
Oh, there you
unmute.
are. Okay. There you are.
Yeah. So thank you for having me on. I'm excited to be here and excited to be with the colleagues and all that. So our resident sentiment study was a little bit, it's a little bit untraditional. We didn't go the extensive route and didn't have a huge methodology. Ours focused more on our rebrand. So during the pandemic, we had a lot of people come out, explore our great outdoors, and we realized that we kind of wanted a refresh for our rebrand. And so we decided to conduct two different types of studies, a listening tour, as well as a very, I would say, cut to the point survey. And we realized that with our leadership that we wanted to try to make sure that we get as much input as possible when we created our rebrand. And we wanted to make sure that our residents felt like they were represented in the rebrand and it wasn't just us coming up with things for ourselves. So our goal was to make sure that we better understand Arizonans, what they love about the state and what they want shown when we implement our logo and all the other messaging that we would have moving forward.
Great. And Javier?
Yeah, thank you. Hi, everyone. So for us, for Travel Oregon, the first resident sentiment study was conducted in 2017. I wasn't part of the organization at that time, so I actually asked our CEO recently what led to that decision, and he said really it's the same thing that's happening now, the same motivations that are leading the need right now was what Travel Oregon was seeing back then. So we realized that some communities such as Bend and the North Coast in Oregon were seeing high volumes of tourists and how that could erode the resident sentiment towards tourism. And we were definitely not the first destination to take on the challenge of measuring resident sentiment, but we were certainly early adopters. And really the goal was to understand how residents perceive that tourism impacts their lives. And the outcome of that was that, well, together with several other inputs, such as industry partner surveys or stakeholder surveys, we realized there was this need to shift from the destination marketing space into the destination management space. And more recently, it has supported the shift towards stewardship destination stewardship. So yeah, and then there's other needs now, such as KPIs for our strategic vision. So our strategic vision outlines a series of KPIs, and some of those are tracked directly through the resident sentiment study. And lastly, our partners have really expressed a lot of need to the point where some of the bigger DMOs in Oregon have actually conducted their own resident sentiment studies. So we're looking to support those efforts as well.
Yeah, interesting. And just a comment that just thought of with what Brittany was talking about, the rebranding. When I was the vice president insights at LA Tourism, we did qualitative and quant among local. To much of what she was talking about, saying we really wanted to understand what people in Los Angeles are proud about. You know, when their friends and relatives come to visit Los Angeles, what do they like to show them? You know, what do they think are the strong assets? Because we really wanted to make sure that our messaging to our tourists meshes with what our residents feel about the destination as well. And we did have some surprises on that. So we're going to move on to methodology, and I particularly wanted to do this webinar because I did note of all the different kinds of research we're responsible for doing. This one in particular had a variety of methodologies of how people are doing it and who they're doing it with. So I want to start with Kyle because Kyle, you actually already let the cat out of the bag in that you're working with the University of Nevada. right? So why don't you tell us more about what your methodology is for conducting resident sentiment?
Yeah, no, I think this is, like you said, Wendy, this is an interesting point of discussion because when we were talking amongst ourselves, like we all have such different ways of going about this. Whereas I feel like normal destination surveys, you go through a panel or you go through other things, and this is definitely not the same. So, yeah, we worked with the University of Nevada, Reno to distribute the survey, and I'm sure we'll talk about question development later. But just in terms of data collection, we had kind of three different, I guess you could call them tiered approaches to data collection. One reason that we decided that we wanted to work with the University of Nevada, Reno was they have, and we specifically worked with the Center for Economic Development at the university. But the USED is kind of what their acronym is. They have a lot of industry contacts in the rural part of the state. So they do a lot of strategic planning. They do a lot of other work, economic development work within the rural part of the state. So they have a lot of contacts within rural Nevada. We have contacts as well through DMOs and other mechanisms. But we're really hoping that them and their network being able to distribute this survey among like regional development authorities and other organizations that they have contact with in the rural part of the state would help us get the survey in front of residents in the state. So in addition to the university's efforts, we also reached out to organizations that we have contact with throughout the state. So local DMOs, chambers of commerce, those types of organizations. And we asked them to, if they would be willing to send this out on their social media, send this out to their local distribution email lists. We really only got about 600 responses from that particular tier that we used. We were hoping for more. So in addition to that, we sent out surveys to Nevada residents that are part of Travel Nevada's consumer newsletter database. And we worked with the state's IT department to send the survey out to all state employees who work for the state of Nevada. So overall, we got about 2,100 responses, which we were pretty happy with. But I will say because of the different ways that we fielded the survey, the results aren't necessarily demographically representative. So we do skew certain directions in terms of gender, educational attainment, income that are not necessarily representative of the broader population of the state. So whenever we're presenting, we do want to note that. But overall, I think we were happy with the 2,100, but we might want to adjust slightly how we distribute in the future. So,
and just a quick follow-up question for you and anybody else on the panel who's working with the universities. Sometimes working with the universities, there's some challenges that sometimes surface in terms of the bureaucracy of a university, the speed of doing it, and so on, and that the cost basically is comparable with using a vendor. What was your experience quickly in working with the university? Was any of that held true?
For me personally, the only thing where that bureaucracy kind of held true was on the billing side of things. We have worked with the contact that we worked with for this survey. We've worked with him for many years, so we were pretty much all systems go with that. We didn't have any hiccups or time delays with anything, so I was personally happy.
Good to hear. Okay, Javier, why don't you tell us about how you're conducting the research?
I just saw Brittany had her hand up, so I want to respect the hand.
I was just going to jump in and talk a little
Okay.
bit about the university, working with university experience.
Okay.
I've just found on my end, you work with university for this specific study, but we have for our economic impacts and wine studies and stuff before. And I do find that it is cheaper, and I find that you can be more creative on exactly what you want. Like you don't have to stick with a certain script that you might have to with others. But one thing I do run into is once summer hits, getting people to work is difficult.
That makes sense.
When
Okay.
people graduate or they leave to go to a different school, and so it can be kind of a high turnover, and having to learn how to go with that can be difficult. So
Well, and now that you have the floor, let's talk about your methodology.
okay.
And then we'll
Sorry,
go back to
Javier.
Javier. Javier, you can sit back for a second.
Yeah, so for the resident study that we did, we took a little bit more, we took both approaches. We had more of the grassroots approach where we just used really simple stuff like our Survey Monkey and Google Forms. And then we worked with a marketing company to really lead on our listening tour. So for our qualitative approach, we hosted in-person and virtual listening sessions We promoted it through our newsletter and through emails and to all the stakeholders we had access to. We would also use a Google form just to have people to just to kind of be a central place for people to go and say, hey, we're going to have a virtual meeting on this day or that day. And when we held our listening sessions, we would have a few questions we would ask specifically, but we were really looking for open-ended answers. We would have written responses sometimes, but majority was video recordings, and we would try to go out to their location if we could. And then on the quantitative side, we deployed a short 2 minutes for tourism study, and really or survey, and really what it was is just trying to get as many people to answer it as possible. Like, we've learned that the longer the survey goes, the less likely someone's going to actually finish it. So we really wanted to appeal to the, it only takes 2 minutes part of it. And so what we did is we took our findings from our listening sessions, and we kind of put that into the survey to try to see, like, okay, is it really accurate with what the rest of the Arizona is feeling, or is it not? And it was pretty conclusive what we found. So that was exciting.
And how did you deploy that? Who did you send it to? What was your sample for the quantitative?
For the quantitative, we ended up sending it out through a variety of sources. We did through our newsletter, we put it on our website,
Oh,
we
okay.
put it on all different types of anything that we have going out.
Anything you have?
And we had a decent amount, considering it wasn't huge, but we had enough to at least be able to show us that what we were hearing in our listening tours did match up. And it was
Yeah,
that was
and
exciting.
I'm also curious, particularly on the qualitative side, was it up to you then to pull all of this together? That's a lot of sources. Did you have?
Fortunately, it was not. Fortunately, it was not. The marketing team that we worked with, they also had a research person. So she took a little bit more on the qualitative data. I took more on the quantitative data, and then we put it all together.
Perfect. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, back to you, Javier. How are you doing your research?
Yeah, thank you. Well, so first of all, I can chime in on on working with the university as well, just a little bit. The first two versions of the study, so 2017 and 2021, were both done with universities. I participated only in the 2021 version, so I'll refer to that. But in my experience, it was actually fairly easy to work with a professor, in the sense that he was very responsive, very accommodating. For me, the biggest hurdle to overcome is that the way that academics communicate is very different to what is needed in the industry. There's, like, for example, charts are much more difficult to read. There's a lot of information on the screen all at the same time. The reports are very in-depth, which is a good thing, but also much more difficult to disseminate within the industry. For this last version, we are working with future partners, and here's another, I think, advantage to working with a company such as Future Partners, is that I do think they have a little more capacity to reach more people. Or yeah, at least
Yeah.
that's been my experience. Not to say that you shouldn't work with a university. I very much appreciate doing the first versions with the support of an academic, because it just allowed us to really define a methodology that we all felt comfortable with and had academic support. But in our latest version, Future Partners, they use a series of panel providers to get survey responses. So the way panel providers work is that they allow people to sign up to receive random surveys, and in exchange, these folks get some form of payment. And as far as I've personally found, it is the closest thing to a randomized sample for a digital survey. And then we, very similar to what Kyle described, we supplement this panel by leveraging our industry partners distribution list, as well as our own distribution list. For this version, we also used some social media ads targeted specifically at rural Oregon, and we had mixed level of success there. But what was really effective for us in rural areas of Oregon was that we sent out postcards via physical mail with an invitation to participate in the survey and a QR code to access it. And this was targeted at households in the 12 counties with the lowest population in Oregon. So all of these counties were under 32,000 people. So I also really want to highlight the importance of collaborating with your local partners, DMOs, chambers of commerce, especially in rural areas. I actually had one of the Chamber of Commerce staff members from Eastern Oregon tell me how they were inviting folks to their local from their local community to the chamber office to be able to respond to the survey. And these are people that might not have the knowledge or access to the technology needed to respond to a digital survey. So yeah, all of that led to, well, actually one last thing I'll add before that. We also wanted to make sure that our partners felt they were being heard. And also offer some motivation to help us get responses. So we actually requested the regional destination management organizations to come up with 2 to 4 questions that would be specifically asked to residents that selected that they were from that region. So that was a big motivator for our RDMOs to help us distribute the survey. And all of that led us to getting close to 7,000 responses for this survey.
Great. And I have a follow-up question I'm going to ask Graham too, because I think the two of you were the ones who used research partners to conduct your research, of which they've done resident studies for other destinations. Did you benchmark at all? Was that at all of an interest to you to understand how others destinations residents feel about their destination or their state? Was that of any interest? They could, if you'd asked them to, possibly, but
Well, not really in our case, because we took some suggestions from future partners methodology, but overall it was a survey that our team designed internally. So the questionnaire was fully different to what they had
Yeah.
used in the past.
Yes.
Um,
So it wasn't comparable. Yeah, got it. Yeah. Okay, great. Hey, Graham?
Yeah, and we've worked with vendor partners in our resident sentiment research, and we've kind of taken 2 paths. Our first path was really a very highly custom path, working with future partners that we did in 2022, and then more recently we've taken a syndicated path, which is really to help with that benchmarking. So, first, what was kind of unique about our custom path, we really did it in 3 stages, where our first stage was listening sessions with industry stakeholders. We did our work really on a regional basis. We have 12 tourism regions in California, and we focused on each region. So we had industry stakeholders from businesses, from DMOs. We did about 4 or 5 listening sessions, just really kind of understand what were their kind of concerns around resident sentiment, what were their issues, what were they hoping to achieve with this. The second phase was qualitative research. We did online focus groups in each region, and that was really great to gather more information and really hear directly from residents. I will say it was really just fascinating to hear everyone kind of talk about where they lived and how much they understood about tourism. And then the third part was the quantitative piece, about a 3,300 sample survey, again, done in all 12 regions. And that really kind of gave us the comprehensive view of the state. The follow-up piece, which we've done more recently, is the syndicated side of it, working with OmniTrack, and that really is to help with benchmarking. We're in our third year of working with them on the syndicated study, and we get data for the state as a whole, and then as well as about 20-something counties, not all of our counties, but probably half, and then specific destinations with California that have enough samples. So, and we share that directly on our industry website. It's offered to the industry in California here to be able to, they can then benchmark themselves either to the state or to the US or to other comparable counties or destinations. So it's just a great tool to help the industry kind of track sentiment in their destination.
Great. And Denise?
Yeah, I think it's interesting to hear how we're all doing things a little bit differently. We are also using a university. It's actually the Policy Institute associated with the University of Utah, the Kem C. Gardner Policy Institute. The first time we did the survey, we reached out to a few different organizations. We're very fortunate here in Utah, and all Utah organizations, and ultimately went with Kem C. Gardner Policy Institute. They've been a partner of ours for years, and we had some contract wiggle room that let us maybe save a little bit of money coming out of the gate. So that was a driving force, but also we've been really happy with the Institute, and we've continued with them using some of the EDA money. Graham, I know you mentioned that you had some EDA money too, which has allowed us to continue the research. But what's really different maybe about what we're doing is we've we're doing a statewide survey each time we do a survey. And then the first time that we did the work, we tapped into 14 areas around the state. Some of the areas are counties, some are merged counties, some are national park gateway communities or ski resort gateway communities. Some are burgeoning visitor economy areas that want to drive visitation. And so worked with our community and partner relations team to really identify which areas we should evaluate. And so that first time that we did the survey, we did the state survey, and then we did 14 individual local community surveys. And then each year after that, we've just been doing 4 areas at a time in addition to the state research, and kind of surfacing which areas we want to look at depending on what the situation is around the state, but not able to do all 14 every time. And then Kim Gardner works with a group called Lighthouse Research, and they did all of the survey fielding on our behalf. And what I think is really fascinating is 90% of the surveys were done via telephone interview. And so there's a lot of really rich verbatim comments from some of the open-ended questions. And then length of the survey, I was really worried that it was going to be too long, but we've had some pretty good success. The statewide survey takes about 12 minutes to take. And if it's an interview for the local, it's a little bit longer. It's an 18-minute interview on average. And people seem genuinely pleased to be able to answer the questions. So, and then with the different areas and different populations, and Javier, you kind of alluded to some of this, the margin of error varies very differently across the communities. And so 7 to 13% margin of error, at a 95% confidence interval. So it's not directionally, we like to watch the information and see if we see any signals. The state is a little bit more polished and within, a 5%. But yeah, those are maybe some of the differences that we're doing here.
So I want to explore a little bit more, as long as I have you here to start with, and in the survey development itself, what did you include in the questions and the topics that you were including in the survey itself?
Yeah. Well, we thought we were going to do a state and community survey all together, and it just grew to be way too long. And so we worked with our internal team, the community and partner relations team. We talked to our board. We were answering questions about whether or not we would be obligated to share the results if we did the work, which looking back, I think that was kind of an interesting way to think about it. We chose to publish the results out of the gate, and we published them on our public facing site ever since. And some of the questions and some of the information is, a little bit hard to hear, but it's good to hear too, because it helps you know where you need to be doing the work. And so you're asking about
the topics. I think you had listed things like perception of tourism, the effects of tourism. You had a list here.
Yeah. So we were really trying to understand the perceptions of tourism, the effects of tourism. We wanted to understand environmental sustainability and whether or not some of the initiatives we were working on in the stewardship arena were valuable to residents, and if they felt like our office should be focusing on helping visitors plan and prepare and treat our assets the way that we're hoping people will. And then we also wanted to check in on awareness of our own campaigns and initiatives, understand what they thought our role should be as a government office. And then we did ask them also about their opinions on visitor related tax use and where they thought that should be pointed.
Wow.
So lots of interesting pieces of information.
I bet. So I'm going to go to Brittany. Brittany, in terms of, what did you ask in your surveys? Where's Brittany?
I'm here. Yep.
Yeah.
Takes me a minute to get to the mute button sometimes. Yeah, so in our listening sessions, we asked a lot of questions like what makes you love Arizona? What are the reasons why you live here? We noticed that quite a few people in Arizona are not necessarily born and raised in Arizona. We have a lot of people that move from the Midwest and the East, and definitely a lot from California, especially after the pandemic. And so it was really interesting to hear, why people actually like Arizona. So that was cool. In our survey, we did, I think it was 6 to 8 questions, and it was multiple choice. And we decided that we were going to, use a screener to see, are you from Arizona or are you not? Or are you a resident at this point? And we wanted to make sure that it was residents answering it. And then we would ask pretty simple questions like, what are some misconceptions about Arizona? What do you wish more people knew about it? And we would list maybe 10 or 20 different things, mostly answers that we had already gotten from our listening tour. And it was pretty good. We were able to find out that a lot of people have similar misconceptions. They want a lot of the same things heard. Specifically for us, we're not just a hot, dry state. We have a lot of things to do out here. We have snow, we've got deserts, we've got all different kinds of things. So it was really cool to understand.
Great. So Graham, I'll go to you. What did you ask? What were the major topics?
I think some of what has already been covered, but I think what was interesting for us coming out of the focus groups and our custom research, we kind of identified that we needed in our quantitative study to ask not just about the community that residents live in, but the broader region that they live in, because not every resident lives in an area where there may be tourism infrastructure. And so it really kind of helped add some nuance, asking about both the community they lived in and their perceptions of tourism and the benefits or challenges, as well as the greater region where there may be more tourism infrastructure. And that just really kind of helped us get a broader sense of their perceptions. We also included both residents as well as workers in specific destinations and regions, because obviously we have a lot of people that commute from destination to destination, region to region. And so asking both residents and workers provided some interesting insights.
Okay. And Kyle, what did you ask?
Yeah, we broke our survey out into 4 different sections, and I will say the research team here, so me and our research analyst, we worked with the university to kind of craft an initial questionnaire, but we brought in a lot of people internally to add feedback. So that would be our director, deputy director, the CEO of Travel Nevada, each kind of department head within Travel Nevada, but also the director of the Arts Council, the director of the Museum and History Division, because those are both under the Tourism and Cultural Affairs Department of the state. And so we got a lot of input into what people wanted to ask. I'm always an advocate for, if you have people who internally who are going to be utilizing the results of the survey, let them have a seat at the table kind of at the beginning. So they have buy-in and they kind of understand the process. But we really broke out our survey into 4 different sections. One is general community questions. And so included in that are things like, kind of what, Brittany and Graham were talking about. What do you like about your community? What challenges do you have in your community, or is your community facing? And then our second section was general sentiment towards tourism. So we also wanted to kind of understand not just kind of the standard kind of agree, disagree statements, but also of those attributes that we asked about your community earlier, how do you feel tourism positively or negatively contributes to those? Our third section was engagement with the tourism industry generally. So, do you as a resident do any kind of tourist things in your own community, like concerts, music, dining out, that sort of thing? And then our fourth section was demographics. So we kind of used a mix of different questions in all of these sections to try to keep the respondent going and give them something new. Overall, we had, I think, 38 questions, which is a fairly long survey. And we did have some drop off after about the halfway point. But we did find if you got through about half the survey, you were pretty likely to complete the whole thing. So yeah, and the 40 questions or 38 questions was pretty evenly distributed among those 4 different sections. So that's kind of how we tackled it. And we may tweak some questions. We might throw some out, bring some new ones in, but that's kind of the structure.
And Javier, I think you're the last person to answer this, talk about this.
So we did a little bit of what has been described already, so I'll talk more about the differences. And I would say the biggest difference is that the way we measure resident perception specifically, which, it's an abstract concept. It's very difficult to even imagine what is a perception. So we measure these across 4 dimensions of tourism impacts. These are economic, environmental, social, and cultural. And the way we measure perceptions in each of these dimensions is that we present respondents with a series of statements that are related to both positive and negative impacts of tourism. So, for example, a positive economic impact statement would be tourism leads to increased income level. And then respondents are asked to rate their level of agreement with each of those statements. And by comparing the average responses across each dimension, we can arrive at an indicator for the 4 dimensions. So that's really the base of our study. The reason we do that is because these perceptions are very good predictors of community support for tourism development. So by asking the questions in this manner, you're really able to get down to some key or identify key pain points and work. And if you work on those key pain points, you are more likely to get further support for tourism development. We do also measure tourism development, support for tourism development, and we do also measure quality of life and several other questions as well.
Great.
Say that's the biggest difference.
So before, I think we just have time for my last question, which is going to be on the key findings. But overall, listening to you people talking about methodology, it sounds like this is not for the faint-hearted for a researcher. It sounds like a lot of effort just went to get to the point of the survey, let alone then actually fielding it and then compiling and coming up with some key findings. So to that point, what were the key findings, and were there any big ahas, and how did you use the research or your partners? And Denise, I think I'll start with you.
Okay, well, key findings. I think big picture, I was surprised by how much support there really was and how proud Utahns are to showcase what they have and what they value. It doesn't necessarily mean that they all want people to join them in their community and live there. Housing, not surprisingly, seems to be one of the biggest kind of watchouts, especially when we're tapping into the gateway communities, and that's not surprising either. The support of our office, I thought, was really valuable to see, and what people thought we should be doing, and the whole community-led visitor readiness. Absolutely, we see support that the community should be leading out on what that looks like, and we should be supporting that, not dictating that, which is where we want to be. And I think informing our office and partner decision-making, a lot of our, especially maybe more rural partners, don't necessarily have the bandwidth or the funding to be able to do this research on their own. And so that's been really satisfying, to hear the value from them about being able to tap into, what the office is doing and feeling like we're offering a partner tool. And biggest aha moments, maybe I'll just share a really quick scenario of the support that we did see from people just being heard. I had a voicemail from someone not too long ago who, the message started off with, "Hey, I took a call last night and, I answered all these questions and I don't even know if it was really the Office of Tourism calling, and I just want to make sure that it is indeed a survey that you guys are fielding." And then the tone completely shifted, and she said how much she appreciated the questions that we were asking and the depth and level of understanding, and her being able to share her opinion. So I thought that was a really great thing to hear.
That is fine. And so, Graham, I'll go to you. Key findings and.
I think the key a lot of the findings we had were kind of aligned to what our expectations were in terms of regions that had more challenges in terms of resident sentiment and those that were just extremely positive. I think the biggest aha for us, and it really came from the focus groups that we had video of, and it was really just how positive California residents felt about their communities and their regions. And we were coming out of the pandemic, there was a bit of brand tarnish towards California that we had identified in other kind of national consumer sentiment research and our marketing research that we were doing. And so to there was a little bit of like, oh wow, like we've got some challenges here. But then when we did this resident sentiment research and to hear just how positive the response was to people living in the state, to the regions, and to generally to the tourism industry, it was really just something that we could share with the industry and kind of get the word out. So it was just a great benefit of the study.
Great. And Kyle, what were your key findings? Any ahas?
Yeah, I don't know if this is necessarily super interesting to anybody else on the call, but I think there were a lot of similarities, more similarities I thought than in how residents across the state answered certain questions in the survey. And I'm talking similarities among different demographic groups. So, for example, when we ask about attributes that people enjoy about their communities, across most different demographic groups, the landscape and outdoor recreation was at the top of most people's lists. Similarly, and I think Denise kind of mentioned this already, but when we ask about challenges that your community is facing, pretty much across every single demographic, so ethnicity, gender, age, income, political affiliation, everyone is saying that their community is struggling with housing affordability and high cost of goods and services. And even when we ask about certain things like, those agree, disagree statements, there are some differences, but for the most part, when you look across different demographic groups, there is a lot more similarities among how people responded to things than I would have thought if you had asked me that before we fielded the survey.
And how's your
One interesting difference, I think, was when we did ask about, what do you enjoy about your community? When we broke that out by geographic region or counties, those living in rural areas tended to like rural parts of their community, which shouldn't be really come as a surprise. But those are things like pace of life, safety, outdoor recreation, and urban residents really tended to like the urban attributes of their areas. So those are things like arts and cultural experiences, dining options, shopping experiences, all of that. So, I think it's probably pretty obvious to say that, but I think when we are as a state going into certain communities, and we're trying to develop them or market them, it's important to know what they like about their living in their areas so we can kind of fit tourism around that existing culture. As opposed to trying to put tourism or wedge tourism in a space that maybe it might not be appreciated. So I think those were a couple of things that were interesting to me.
Great. And Javier?
Yeah. So at a very high level, we saw in general across the state positive impacts of tourism are perceived slightly more positively, or they outweigh the negative impacts very slightly. And this gets even closer when you look at the social and environmental dimensions, where they're almost even in the sense that negative impacts are almost as strong as the positive ones. Not surprising, we also have done some additional analysis looking at level of visitation versus population by county. And if there's a relationship between that ratio and the resident sentiment, and there is, more visitation with lower population gets you a more negative resident sentiment. And for me, I'll describe an example, maybe not the best aha moment, but example, but I think it really opened my eyes to the power that this kind of research can have, which was collaborating with a group in the North Coast that, as I already mentioned, had some of the most negative perceptions. We collaborated with a group called Oregon's North Coast Tourism Management Network. So what we did was we presented the data on resident sentiment to this group, and the Oregon Coast Visitor Association put together some talking points on efforts that are being done to address these pain points in the community, tourism-powered efforts to address pain points. So the first thing that happens with that is that we're able to sit down with these partners and show that we are on a level playing field, that we come here from with a sense of understanding and just knowing that we're not trying to make everything sound nice. Like, we see the issues that you're facing. That really helps build communication and trust with these partners and the Oregon Coast Visitor Association. So, for example, we showed one of the biggest issues is tourists leading to more contamination. So we showed tourism-powered programs such as the, let me find the name here on my notes, Tillamook Adventures program, which has tourists go out with a guide to do citizen science or beach cleanups, or the um, North Coast shuttle system, which is an effort to reduce the impact of traffic from tourists. So to me, that was really a really powerful moment, just seeing one of our regional partners being able to use our data to communicate better, in a better manner with the local partners.
Great. And finally, Brittany, and then I think we have a few minutes to take some questions. So Brittany, you want to bring it
Yeah.
home?
Yeah, of course. So on our end, some of the big aha moments is just like it's already been mentioned, Arizonans are very, very proud. They're proud of their state and they want to make sure that everybody knows everything that it has to offer. So if you guys see behind me, we've got our new logo and it really touches a little bit on the diversity. All of the outdoor things that we have, you can see, you know, the flowers and the hummingbirds and the trees. Like we have all that. We're not just a desert. And even in there, you can see the tech logos and the business opportunities. And so that was a big part for us, is making sure that we expressed what the residents wanted to be seen. Another thing that we were pretty excited about was just the fact that a lot of Arizona want visitors. They want people to come out there, but they want them to come out in a sustainable way.
Yeah.
So we've learned that we need to get a baseline for our sustainability, how people are going out there, how they're handling the different weathers and things like that. So we've actually started working on our sustainability, and we're hoping we can talk about it when we're done with that. But
Yeah.
it's been really good for us. It's really helped a lot of our initiatives, and it's given us a chance to kind of step back and look at what's important to our residents and make sure we're displaying that to everybody. And another part that I thought was really cool was just if you look at the Arizona sign, we do keep the sun in there. So we're not saying that the sun isn't a big part of Arizona, but there's a lot more to it as well.
That's great. Well, this has been great. So, Cindy, I'm going to turn it back to you. I think we have some questions from our attendees. Is that right?
Yes, we do see some questions that came in. I think one of them was for Denise. The question asked that you have performed, I'm assuming, the resident sentiment in general over the last 4 years. Do you see significant changes from year to year? And by doing that, does it create awareness of tourism?
We do not see a lot of changes. The first 2 years that we did it, we said, well, 2 data points don't really make a trend. And so it was interesting to see the third year, how similar results were. And then I do think that the survey creates awareness, absolutely. And it helps residents think critically about some of the services that they have or amenities that they have in their own communities, and linking tourism to that. And so, do you have more cultural opportunities? Do you have more dining options? Do you have more trail infrastructure? Like, do these things all happen? And linking that to the visitor economy, I think is really important. And so, an advocacy kind of perspective, I think, is something that, we've taken with this research also, like really wanting to understand what residents know and don't know, and then maybe what we can help them learn or be better about talking about. And so, yeah, hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, and let's put the question to some of the other panelists as well, in terms of, those of you who've done it multiple times or at least twice, are you seeing any difference? And more specifically, I think, Graham, in California, and I met in other destinations too, we had many DMOs that during the pandemic really did not like these tourists. They were not respectful and they were overwhelming the outdoor ones, the rural ones in particular. So, Graham, did that come up, and has that mitigated at all over in times? Are people in those areas getting over that? Or is it still fresh mind of the tourists were overwhelming them?
Yeah, I mean, I think from the custom research we did, we weren't seeing as significant of issues as we expected to see. We expected to hear more of those stories and see that come out in the data, and we didn't see. We saw some of it in specific regions, but not to the degree that we expected. And with the benchmarking we've been doing with the OmniTrack data, I mean, there has been some, again, we have about three waves. So again, it's hard to pick up on trend, but we have seen some increase in positivity. And so certainly, there's an effort to communicate the value of tourism, particularly from taxes and economic benefits that way. And so we've seen some benefit there.
Yeah.
Increase there.
Anybody else? Have you seen any differences of any significance over time? I'm not seeing anybody say anything. Okay, so Cindy, we have time for a couple more questions.
Yeah, probably one more. And this question is asking, did gateway communities generally have lower sentiment compared to non-gateway communities?
Mm,
I can weigh in on that one. And it might also get a little bit at the last question too, where directionally, maybe we're not seeing a lot of change within a certain area. We do see a lot of differences across the areas. And the gateway communities are definitely where we see that. And just one example, so where, Javier, and I think most of us are asking a similar question where we ask if the positive effects are outweighing the negative effects. And statewide, we're hovering around 58, 59%, which I mentioned earlier, was kind of where we want to be. But across different communities and in one particular gateway community, that willingness to say that those positive effects outweigh the negative is 22%. Whereas in some of the growth areas of the state, it's as high as 77%. And so
wow.
there's a wide range of how people feel about that. And it's really interesting to kind of pour over all of the results and see how they vary across those areas.
Is it that those who did respond more negatively, that they just don't understand what the benefits are? They're not aware of the economic impact benefits and so on?
I think that the challenges that they have in their community reflect how they're answering that question. We ask about the economic benefit, and almost 90% of people are, recognize the economic positive impact, but they're less willing to say if the trade-off is still worth it.
Worth it. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Anybody else want to chime in on this one? If not, I think we've got 2 minutes left. We want to be sensitive to everybody's time. Cindy, was there any other questions, burning questions you think we need to ask, or are we got it covered?
No, I think we got it covered, and we just have some final announcements for the audience as we close out. First of all, thank you, the Greater Western panel. Thank you all for sharing your insights, and thank you, Wendy, for
Oh, my pleasure.
moderating this discussion. Thank you, everyone in the audience, for joining us today, participating in the chat and in the Q&A. I hope everyone find this webinar, very helpful, insightful, and maybe generate some new ideas that you can bring back. If you would like to continue this conversation, suggest maybe future webinar ideas, or simply just want to stay in touch, we have a Greater Western TTRA Discord community. And I'm about to drop the link in the Zoom chat right here that you can join and continue the conversation with us.
And why don't you
And
briefly talk about what Discord is in case somebody isn't aware of what Discord is?
yeah. It is a communication platform for our, just general travel and tourism research conversations. It is open to anyone who is interested in these type of topics. And again, if you have ideas or maybe you have questions or discussion points that we just didn't get to, you just want to stay in touch with everyone, please, use that Discord. We have different channels to have these type of conversation. Currently, we have tourism trend, we have idea exchange channel. These are all great ways to contact your peers. I think most of the people we're seeing are DMOs, tourism offices, universities, and businesses who focus on analytics and research. So, everyone's welcome to continue the conversation with us. And while I wait for everyone to quickly click that Discord link in the Zoom chat, I'm gonna take a quick photo of our panelists here. If you can all just look in the camera just for 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3. Oh, okay. I think I got that. Okay. So, and second quick announcement is that if you're in the greater Western region, please save the date for our regional conference that we're co-hosting with One West Alliance. It will be held in Olympia, Washington State from September 9th to 11th. And the conference detail, future events, they will all be shared in our Discord. So that's it. Anything else from Wendy? Anything?
No, thank you all for joining us. And if you feel that, we should continue on this path, just let us know. And if you have any topics, we'd be more than happy to try to put them into a webinar. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.